Hello and welcome to episode 102 of the Arena Regulars podcast. I'm Zach.
And I'm Jeff.
And we're your source for drunken Magic the Gathering arena content.
That's right. Basically just a couple of regular dudes drinking some irregular beers and talking about Magic the Gathering, in particular the online client MTG Arena.
And today is one of our favorite episodes. It is a pregame for Phyrexia, All Will Be One.
I feel like we just love all of our episodes because we always say it's one of our favorites.
It's true. It's true. We love all our episodes. So this week we're going to talk a bit about it's our acquisition period. So it's the beginning of a new set. So we want to collect all the cards that we want. So we can talk about our no pass lists. But first, each week we both bring a beer. We drink Jeff's, then drink mine. Rate them on a scale of bronze to mythic and choose the best for last. So with that, Jeff, what's on tap?
All right, this week I have brought for you Hazed and Confused by Muskoka Brewery. It is a juicy IPA, 6.5%, and it has the person who I'm assuming is Mad Tom on the can, and his head is exploding. So for those who don't know, Mad Tom is a beer out here from Muskoka. It's one of my favorites. I quote-unquote grew up on it. Not as a child, of course, but like my first foray into craft beer was basically that. And so I have a soft spot for it. And Mad Tom is a West Coast IPA. And so this presumably is like their East Coast version. This is since it says juicy IPA. I guess it's a New England style by the same makers as Mad Tom. And pretty sure it features Mad Tom himself on the can. So I was excited to try their East version of the West classic.
Yeah, I guess that does make a lot of sense. I wasn't really thinking that was Mad Tom, but that's for sure who that is.
Has to be, right?
I love the visual of you, like, as a baby with Mad Tom in your baby bottle, drinking it. It's perfect. Anyway, we have some Magic news. Phyrexia All Will Be One releases next week on Arena, Tuesday, February 7th. And leading up to that, they have their normal pre-orders, except for they're a little different this time. The pre-order bundles have changed. So normally we had two, where one was like open 50 packs, and then one is like get a bunch of limited tokens. Now there's a third one where they moved the Mastery Pass that was part of the like play one with all the limited tokens to its own pass. So basically they have three tiers of how expensive they are. It used to be like $50 or $50, and now the 50 packs is $50, and then if you want the limited tokens, it's $25, and then if you want the Mastery Pass, it's $15. Or so. I think there's some tax in there. But anyway, it's just new, and I wanted to get your take on it, Jeff. Like, is this it's kind of like a useless change, or does it seem like possibly better?
More options is always better, and different entry points for players who want this. I never buy these, so it doesn't inspire me that much. Like, I still probably think it's not worth it for me to get the Mastery Pass. And yeah, I prefer to collect just by drafting. So it's not going to make that big a difference for me, I don't think. But this might move the needle for other people, you know. Because $50 is a lot for...
Yeah.
And that being the only option, I'm sure there are people who, you know, wanted to be a part of the pre-release action, but couldn't justify spending $50 on it.
And I kind of feel that way. And the one I always wanted, or if in the past I have bought them a few times, but I couldn't do it for every set because it just felt like $50 every set just felt like a lot on top of whatever gems I wanted to get. But the play bundle, which is like draft tokens and seal tokens, that is the one I wanted. And now it's cheaper, and it doesn't have the Mastery Pass, but that was usually kind of just extra to me. This seems great. And they're also...
that one would be the one I would consider personally.
Yeah. And now they've added where you also get 5 play-in points, which is kind of interesting. So, like, this is the first time you can just, I don't know, straight up buy play-in points. 5 per set, which isn't very much. But kind of interesting. Nice to get new people kind of excited. Like, hey, you have some play-in points. Play in these events and get more, and then do the qualifiers. I like it.
Yep.
Seems good. There are also some interesting like events going on in February. They're doing like a Phyrexia festival. They do this every so often with different sets where they kind of have... It happens with every set, but they don't always call it a festival. And this one specifically is giving card styles for playing on different spheres of Phyrexia. If you want to know more about spheres, tune in to next week's episode. You'll learn a lot more about the spheres of Phyrexia then. But yeah, it seems kind of cool. They are the build your own deck kind of things, but I do enjoy it when they have things like this where they kind of try to add a bit more story to Arena.
Yeah, I tend to play in these things if it lines up. Like, if I happen to be hopping on Arena and I see that it's active and then there's a card style I want, like, sure, yeah, why not?
Yeah, and these ones look pretty sick as well. They're like the different colored backing with like really sharp black lines that look like they're kind of exploding. I don't know. They're really cool. So check those out. Last thing for Magic News is we don't talk about all the midweek magics, but there is one that is really important that's coming up. And so it's February 14th to the 16th. They are doing a Phantom Sealed, which is all will be one. So it's always great when midweek magic, because midweek magic is always free. And when they do sealed events like this, you don't get to keep the cards, but you do get to just practice playing, which is really great, especially because the qualifier weekend and all the plans for the qualifier in February are Phantom Sealed, all Phyrexia, all will be one. And then the Arena Open in March, I think it's the 4th and the 5th, is also sealed and draft, all will be one. Which also then leads into the Arena Championship later, which I'm not qualified for, pro players are qualified for, but it's also draft, all will be one. So I really like that they're planning it really well. Whereas like, hey, you get a midweek magic where you get to play for free and practice and see if you like it.
Yeah, I love it when they do this, when they give you like a free way to play the format that the big tournaments are, or that the big upcoming tournaments are. We've talked about it before. It feels like they do this somewhat randomly, and it just happens to line up. I wish they were a little more active. Like literally every Arena Open should have something like this where you get to practice the format for free. But anytime it pops up, that's awesome. So
yeah,
I would, if you have the time and are planning on playing in the Arena Open, you should do this.
Yeah,
this one too.
Jeff, let's get into the main topic of the evening, which is basically talking about new Phyrexia, all the sweet cards, and all the sweet cards that we want, and our no pass lists.
There are so many, man. There are so many.
There are a lot. I had to like kind of pare it down a bit. My list isn't as big as it normally is because I feel like in the past maybe mine were too large. But before we get right into it, Jeff, do you want to explain the no pass list and our kind of philosophy behind a new set when it comes out?
Yeah, so I alluded to this earlier, that I said that I prefer to build my collection through drafting. Sometimes it is nice to get the 50-pack head start or whatever, but generally most of my collection building is done through drafting. And here on the Arena Regulars, we are firm believers in rare drafting. So what that means is if there's a rare in your pack, even if it's not going to be good in your draft deck, if you know that it's a card that you want to play in some constructed format or you want in your collection, you should still take that rare. That's our philosophy. It's worth more than the relative increase you'll get from bumping up, your 23rd best card to your 22nd best card, whatever, all your draft picks slide down one. That's unlikely to change the course of the draft in a meaningful way, whereas you get a free wild card by taking the rare. And so what we advise is that you predetermine beforehand what are the rares that if I see them, I will just take them. Because if you don't do this, when it happens, you're just in the middle of a draft and you're like, oh no, I see this murder, which is really great for my black deck. But then there's Nahiri, the Unforgiving, in this pack. Do I want Nahiri? I don't know. But if you just have a list that says, yep, I always take Nahiri, then you don't have to think about it and you don't have to panic and maybe make the wrong decision. You just take the Nahiri. You don't feel bad about not taking the murder because hey, my hands were tied. I have this list and I had to. So we like to start the format by making these lists. Call it the no pass list because it's cards we're not going to pass.
Yes. And a lot of people like to have these up in their mind. If you talk to a lot of people, for the most part, they kind of have an idea. But if you actually sit down and write it out, and recently I've been trying to write out like the amount of copies that I want of each card, so that I don't have to, again, think about it in the draft. The less I have to think about in the draft, the better, because I already have trouble picking cards.
Oh, yeah.
So
Especially in a new set, right? Like you're reading everything.
just being like, sick, this card I really want, I'm going to take that. I don't even look at the rest of the pack most of the time because it can make me start to second guess myself. Sometimes I just pick it and go. And it's like, oh, no, I saw it. It's done. It's done.
See, I usually use that time to like just read the cards to build that familiarity. I'm like, ooh, I get a free like minute here where I take the rare for sure, and then I get to read what this common does because I've seen it a bunch of times, but I never had time to read it.
That is smart. I maybe should do that, but I know myself, I probably won't. But anyway, Jeff, do we want to just jump right into our no pass list and what cards we're looking forward to for the set? Because I'm sure they're just going to keep talking about them. They're going to keep coming up if we don't talk about them right now, so we might as well.
Yeah, let's just get to it. So these always start off. I have like a formula that I go down. And the first thing that I look at is, are the rare lands good, basically? If the answer is yes, then the rare lands are all on my no-pass list. I want 4 of each, if possible. So that is true here. I want Blackcleave Cliffs, Copperline Gorge, Darkslick Shores, and Razorverge Thicket. So when I say rare lands, I guess I mean rare dual lands, or tri-lands, whatever the set may be. There are some other rare lands in this set that are also, some of them are pretty good. But I'm particularly talking about the dual lands.
These are also something that we think you should do this. When we say it's the number one thing we think about, is because like when you look at decks online, and it's so easy to just copy decks into Arena, you should. It feels so much better when you already have the entire mana base in your collection, and so you don't ever have to be like, well, maybe I can't play this deck because I don't want to craft all the lands. You just take them in draft always, even if they aren't your colors or whatever. Obviously, that's what the whole list is about. But
yeah, I always take these, and then I'm like always hitting Alt on a PC. I guess it's Alt to check how many I have, and I'll only consider I won't take them if I already have 4 and it's bad in my deck, because that's just like 20 gems or whatever. But as long as I have less than 4, just definitely taking these. And other people don't do this, so you can actually, in your first few drafts, you can get like 4 or 5 of these, because other people are passing them.
Yeah, and very, like, maybe the first day they won't, but soon after that, people will pass them, like, often. When you're playing player drafts, like, they pass these a lot. So you can just rake it in. Like, and it feels good when you leave a draft and you're like, I got 3 or 4 of the dual lands. I won. Like, I don't even have to play. I just feel like I won. It's so nice.
You could go like 2-3 after that and still feel pretty good because you set yourself up so well to build anything in the format later on. Yeah,
and also Jeff was saying Alt on PC, it's option on Mac. That just tells you, Arena will tell you how many you have of 4 in your collection for any pack you're looking at, just if you didn't know. It's really nifty tool.
Yeah, I use it all the time, even for like last pick commons and stuff. Just like, which one do I not have 4 of yet, to try to collect the whole set, so I just start automatically filling my treasure chest.
Yeah.
Okay, so that gets that out of the way. I'm sure they're on Zach's list too. The other one that I always check is the Planeswalkers. Are the Planeswalkers in the set good? Am I interested in them? This is just kind of because it's like an easy thing to do. Planeswalkers are generally pretty powerful cards, always mythics, and if there are any that you actually really want, just better to like iron that out ahead of time. Now, this set in particular is harder to do that because there are more Planeswalkers than usual.
Yes.
So I don't actually think I want all of them. Normally I'm just like, yeah, sure, throw all 3 Planeswalkers on the no-pass list. But this time I have to be a little more selective. Like, I'll probably take them all, to be honest. But in terms of what's making the list, and I definitely want, I don't think I want to put all of them on there. The first one for me is Tyvar. I love this card. This is like Tyvar Jubilant Brawler is 1 black-green for a legendary planeswalker with 3 loyalty. You may activate abilities of creatures you control as though those creatures had haste. Love it. That's amazing. +1, untap up to 1 target creature. Okay, pretty interesting with the previous text. And then -2 is mill 3 cards. Then you may return a creature card with mana value 2 or less from your graveyard to the battlefield. So, all in all, I think that's a lot of cool little things for a 3-mana planeswalker. This is just like a perfect card for me. This is like the janky black-green self-mill graveyard mid-range shenanigans where it like takes 7 moving pieces to get together and is only medium powerful. That's my kind of deck. So Tyvar fits right into that. And we've talked about some cards in the past that we were alluding to getting better with Tyvar. So I'm pretty excited for this card and absolutely will be taking it over anything.
Yeah. One thing with the planeswalkers, because I feel very similarly about how there's 10 of them, and usually we have 3, so it's quite different. But the completed planeswalkers are all mythic, and the non-completed planeswalkers are all rare.
Right.
So that does change things a little bit, where I'm looking a little bit harder at some of the mythic ones, being like, okay, it might be harder to pick these up, so maybe those are the ones I'm focused on. But I knew you were going to pick this. I didn't actually put Tyvar on my list, but often when we have these episodes, I try to look at Jeff's list and be like, okay, what cards is he going to build a janky deck out of that I want to try whenever he figures it out? And so I should be prepared to have the cards ready for it. And this is probably one of the cards that I'm like, well, if I see one, it's not technically on my list, but I probably can't stop myself from taking it because I know this deck list is coming my way and I want to be prepared for when I get to try it.
There will be at least one deck list with 4x Tyvar in it that I'll send to you at some point.
Hell yeah. All right. I'm excited for it. So as I was talking about planeswalkers before I was focused more on the completed ones. The planeswalker I want the most, I really only just put one on my list, though, like you said, I would probably just take most of them if they're around. Besides Koth, I don't really think I care about that card. But I think I would pick up Jace the Perfected Mind, who is a 2 blue Phyrexian blue for a 5-mana Jace Planeswalker with the completed ability. It has a +1 until your next turn. Up to 1 target creature gets -3, -0. -2, target player mills 3 cards. Then if a graveyard has 20 or more cards in it, you draw 3 cards. Otherwise, you draw 1 card. And then it also has a -X. Target player mills 3 times X cards. So, as we've seen in the past, the completed ability is like if you use the Phyrexian mana, if you pay the 2 life instead of using the blue mana, it comes into the battlefield with 2 less loyalty counters. So either this costs 4 and it's a 5 loyalty planeswalker, or it costs 3 and 2 life and it's a 3 loyalty planeswalker. The reason I want this card, and I think I only want one. I don't really know if when the second or third one come around, if I really need it, but I want to try out 1 copy in our Rogues deck in Explorer, because I was interested in seeing if having a way, something that happens in the deck is like, sometimes your opponent will exile their graveyard and all your creatures like turn off, or like you just need a way to like turbocharge into making all your 1/1s into 3/2s and just like be able to just destroy them really quickly. And this card coming down like for 3 mana or 4 mana and milling, like at the very least, if I'm just trying to fill the graveyard with cards, it costs 3 and 2 life, and then I mill 9 cards into their graveyard, which is enough to turn on all of our cards. So 3 mana to turn on our whole deck feels pretty good. I had sorcery speed, but if I have the extra mana to be able to keep it around, I don't know. Also, like milling 3 cards and making them mill 3 cards and then drawing a card, or just ancestral recalling sounds really nice. That probably means we're winning the game, but I don't know. I'm interested in seeing if I can have one of these slide in and see what happens. Maybe it's terrible, but if I pick it up in a draft, I'm not going to feel bad. So That is definitely on my list.
Yeah, on my list as well, 100%. Really like this Jace design. I'm also like now thinking about a whole Sultai self-mill thing in Standard. I know Sultai is not really a allowable color combination.
With our lands,
but,
yeah.
Maybe with some of the mana helping and the milling, you can actually get there. Yeah, definitely a cool card. I want them as well. And the last of the Planeswalkers, I can't believe you poo-pooed, but I'm going to put him on my list, is Koth.
I love it. I love it so much. That's so good.
I have a soft spot for big red decks. I wish, and I want to play like Koth Jaya mid-range mono red and see if there's something there. I wish Koth and Jaya didn't have the same mana value.
Yeah.
Because for some, even if it sounds weird, if Jaya just cost 5, I would feel more comfortable putting like, even if it was the same card, but just looking at my curve being like 3 or 4 costs into 2 or 3 Jayas just feels better than when they're all 4s, even though obviously that's strictly worse to have the Jaya cost more. It still like looks better. I don't know. It looks more like a curve. So I wish Jaya was a little more powerful and was 5 or Koth was. But hey, I'm going to try some sort of big red strategy.
Yeah.
If that's even going to be semi-competitive, Koth's going to have to play a role.
Have you thought at all to just play Chandra Dress to Kill in that? Because it's 3 into 4. I know it's not like big red style.
I could get behind that.
Yeah. I think I might be a little bit on board.
Chandra into Koth.
Yeah, Chandra into Koth. Seems kind of good. But anyway, no, I didn't really mean to poo-poo on Koth, but like it just seemed
rude.
Yeah. I was specifically looking at all the completed ones, and you picked 2 of the uncompleted Planeswalkers.
Yeah.
So
I'm more interested in the uncompleted one. The completed ones I think are pretty good.
Yeah.
But I'm just, my style tends to lean more towards the uncompleted ones.
For sure.
But like we were saying, I'd probably, unless I thought the draft was going like super poorly or something, I don't know. I would probably just take any Planeswalker realistically.
I mean, realistically, yeah. I don't want to talk about all of them. The other one I was
exactly
like, I didn't put Nahiri on my list, but that's when I was really close to being like, oh, I want this deck. I looked through some cards and realized maybe it's not a deck that's going to be put together just yet, so I don't care that much. But
yeah,
Nahiri does look sweet.
And similarly, like I think Nissa is very good. I don't know if it's a card I'm super pumped about or whatever.
Yeah.
Personally, you know.
I'm not super pumped about it, but I'm going to lose to it, I'm sure. So you're ready for that one. Though, speaking about green decks, so I do this every time we have one of our pregame episodes. I talk about how much I'm so excited about this specific deck that all I want to do is play this deck in Standard, and then I end up never playing it and getting all the excitement out in the episode and just never happening. But
yeah. Classic Zach.
I still have to do it, so I still have to talk about the deck I really want to play in Standard that I'm never going to play.
That's a really toxic habit, man.
That's good. So of course he's alluding to I want to play a toxic deck really bad, and all of the cards that I put on my no pass list are just for that deck, and that's all that it is. So I'm going to spend the rest of the episode just talking about toxic cards. Just get ready.
Yeah.
Though this first card, to be fair, is part of 2 decks I want to build. So it is Venerated Rot Priest, which every time I say that, I want to say Loxodon, but that's a different card. So Venerated Rot Priest is a single green for a 1/2 Phyrexian Druid, and it has Toxic 1, which is, of course, our poison mechanic for the set. I think it's fixed infect. I think it's better. And the play pattern is going to be, I think, better. Probably not as strong, but like just a better... I just think it's better altogether.
Yeah, I agree.
And anyway, so cool. A 1 mana 1/2 toxic, sure. But it has an ability that says, whenever a creature you control becomes the target of a spell, target opponent gets a poison counter. So if anyone targets any of your creatures, your opponent gets a poison counter. So that includes yourself. So obviously it's nice because it's like a pseudo, like you play your creatures and then they try to kill it and you give them poison counters. But what I really want to do is use it with my favorite lady, Ivy, and do this Simic like Enchantress deck where like you have him on turn 1 and I can play Ivy or like my Storm Chaser Drake on turn 2, and then all the other spells I start playing on my creatures are going to give my opponent poison counters. And when one of my favorite like interactions in Magic, and I know Jeff knows this and he thinks it's dumb and hates it, but is where it's the classic argument we have. It's not really an argument. I basically lose where I want my opponent to try to bolt my creature and I giant growth it. That's what I want to do for the most part in most games. Yeah. But really in reality, it's more like they try to like, Doom Blade it and I'm going to give it Hexbrew for indestructible. That's really what happens. And so what happens in that scenario is that they get 2 poison counters. So not only do I get to do the thing I want to do, which is protect my creature, I also kill them in the process, which is awesome. And I'm so excited, especially because there is a new protection spell in the set that looks very good, and I'm going to put it right into this deck. It's going to be so nice. It actually makes me feel like my Ivy deck might have some legs. And so we'll see if this green-blue deck can have the same feel. It won't be rogues in the slightest, but it has a couple extra like counterspell and draw spells with a weird poison sub-theme, with the possibility of like, am I going to kill you with poison or with damage? Do you know which one is more important? We'll find out. So
yeah, and I think that's where like what you were saying about toxic being fixed infect comes into play, because like infect creatures are busted with pump spells, but toxic creatures are not. They do more damage, but they don't give you more poison. So it really does start to turn into that two-sided race of like which ones matters more, the poison or the damage. And I'm really curious to see how that plays out.
So anyway, Venerated Rot Priest. Everyone knows about this card and everyone's super stoked on it. I am also one of those people. So I think the first deck will be the straight toxic deck, and the second one will be my Enchantress toxic deck. So we'll see how it goes.
Oh man!
If I build either, who knows?
Sounds awful. Okay. One card I'm super excited about, because this card, when I read it, I was like, wait, what? Does that say what I think it says? And the answer was yes. Is Capricious Hellraiser. So this one kind of caught me by surprise because it just seemed amazing to me. And so I'll read it for you. It's 3 red for a 4/4 Phyrexian dragon. It costs 3 less to cast if you have 9 or more cards in your graveyard. It has flying, and when it enters the battlefield, exile 3 cards at random from your graveyard, choose a non-creature, non-land from among them, and copy it. You may cast the copy without paying its mana cost. So, okay, there's some deck building costs here, right? Like, you need some number. Presumably this wants to be some kind of finisher in, like, a spells deck. But honestly, you don't need that. If it's a 3-mana 4/4 flyer that will sometimes get you a free spell, like, that's pretty good. So, in any sort of self-mill strategy, which of course I've already had my eye on, this is huge. And I would, mention that it's non-creature, so you can cast planeswalkers off this, or enchantments and stuff. So if you have, it doesn't have to be like blue-red spells. It's just probably your generic mid-range deck would be okay with this, where it would hit a reasonable amount of the time, because those decks are sort of like the 1/3 creature, 1/3 land, 1/3 other stuff kind of build. This exiles 3, so reasonable shot at exiling something that you can cast. I think this card's pretty cool. I think it's really powerful. I don't know if it's actually going to be a player in the format, but I'm excited to try it. And being that it's a mythic rare, I'll have to make sure I'm taking it.
Absolutely. Reading this card, because of course my mind immediately goes to, is it spells, and then it shuts down, and
and then it's like,
and then I move to a new card. But going in your big red deck that's 4 of 2 planeswalkers, and then maybe a lot of the other cards are just like artifacts, that because you can cast artifacts off of this. You just have to figure out how to mill yourself. So maybe are you playing like a Rakdos build that can mill yourself and just play artifacts, and your planeswalkers make creatures, and you get to play Your favorite card? I don't know.
Yeah, Jund could be on the table. The other thing is, like, in a big red deck, if you're generating a healthy amount of mana, like, a 4/4 that casts a free spell for 6 is still pretty good. You don't have to cast it for 3 to get that second ability.
That's true.
So yeah, I think this is just a pretty solid card in the right deck, and it's definitely super powerful, and whether or not it ends up seeing play is obviously contingent on a lot of other stuff.
I mean, it isn't black, so I don't know how playable it is in Standard right now, but...
And the Grixis decks don't want it, the current iterations of Grixis, so probably
not. But, you know, it does seem super cool, though. So I like the points for splashiness.
Well, it's actually pretty hard to splash because it's triple red.
I get it. Anyway, the next card I'm going to talk about is, of course, more toxic bullshit. And this is the other card that everyone's obsessed with. And I am also one of those people. So it's a green card. It's Bloated Contaminator. It's 2 and a green for a 4/4 Phyrexian Beast with Trample and Toxic 1. And whenever it deals combat damage to a player, you proliferate. So this is just a fucking nice overrate body that just doesn't quit.
Yeah,
that's a big boy.
Obviously, kind of deals 2
Yeah.
poison counters when it deals damage, and the fact that it has trample and is huge means it's probably going to deal damage. Yep, that just seems like a high rate toxic card.
So really happy with that. The only problem is that I'm going to play so many games where this just gets stonewalled by Shieldred, but I'm trying to figure out some ways around that at the moment, but I'll get back to you on that. But I'm definitely taking this card. This is also a beast in limited too, so like for sure. Like
it's pretty good.
It's a really good card. I really want this card.
Well, if Zach's only going to talk to you about toxic, I'm only going to talk to you about janky graveyard cards.
Hell yeah.
So the next card that I have an eye on as being super interesting to me is Conduit of Worlds. This is a 2 green artifact that has some of my favorite text in Magic, which is you may play lands from your graveyard. I love all cards that say this. Crucible of Worlds, Ramanap Excavator. I've been on board for all of them. I don't know why I wouldn't be on board for this one. And then it also has, just to put the cherry on top, it also says, choose target non-land so you can tap it. Choose target non-land permanent card in your graveyard. If you haven't cast a spell this turn, you may cast that card. If you do, you can't cast additional spells this turn. Activate only as a sorcery.
You're gonna have to play this card and show me why you like it. It seems like it does seem super graveyardy janky, but like anytime there's like a 4-mana artifact that just the first line of text is exactly the one that you're excited about, I just like it's the same thing. I just like stop reading and walk away. I did read this whole card, but it seems cool. But I'm excited to see what you do with it because it looks like it wants something else to go on, and I'm excited to see what cards you pair with it because that will make it cool. At the moment, I don't think it's cool, but I know that as soon as you do something sweet with it, it'll be pretty sweet.
I mean, we just need the Gitrog monster back, but
yeah,
guess they didn't reprint that one for me. Yeah, this should cost 3, and then I'd be super excited. But at 4 is like, oof.
Yeah.
But I still love it.
4 is a bit rough, but it does seem like there could be some fun shenanigans with the Nuka Pena sack lands, where you just like I've already seen people play with those a little bit, and this way you always have lands in your graveyard, and you just go get other ones. So maybe there's something. Love it. Oh boy, all my 4-ofs are just gonna. I might try to talk about 2 of them at the same time because it's just gonna be all. They're basically the same card.
Yeah.
So these are 2 white cards that are both feeding into the toxic mechanic, and I bet as you're sitting here, you can guess exactly which ones I'm going to talk about. So it's Skrelv Detector Might, which is a 1 mana. It's a single white for a 1/1 legendary artifact creature, Phyrexian Might with Toxic 1, and it can't block. And it has the activated ability White Phyrexian and tap. To choose a color, another target creature you control gains Toxic 1 and Hexproof from that color until end of turn. It can't be blocked by creatures of that color this turn. So it basically gets protection, but they just decided not to use protection anymore for some reason. But this card, look at how cute he is. He's just gnawing on somebody's claw. No, the like tokens in the set are like these little might tokens, and they're all 1/1s with Toxic 1 and can't block. But this is like their leader, basically, because he protects everybody. And I love little white creatures that protect you. I love the Selfless Savior, the dog that sacrifices to protect you. I love Mother of Runes. All those cards. Love it. So this thing. This is the shit, especially because you can just pay 2 life to do it. Like, they could have fucked you over by being like, you have to pay mana. No, I don't have to pay mana for this. I love it. With that being said, I probably only want 2 to start, because I don't know if I don't really love the idea of opening a hand and being like, sick. I have 2 or 3 of this card in my opening hand, and those are my early plays, because it is legendary. So kind of a bummer there. It's just a tiny bummer that I can't have more than 1 in the battlefield, but I do like it, and I like the protection that we're getting. And I said I was talking about 2 cards, so of course I'm just going to pair this with, the rest of the card, essentially, which is Skrelv's Hive, which is a 1 and a white for an enchantment, and it's, Jeff had said this, but I've heard other people cutely say it as well. It's Critter Blossom. So at the beginning of your upkeep, you lose 1 life and create a 1/1 colorless Phyrexian Might artifact creature token with Toxic 1, and this creature can't block. But it also has the new ability Corrupted. So as long as your opponent has 3 or more poison counters, creatures you control with Toxic have lifelink. So the idea is that my entire deck is going to be Toxic anyway. So all of my creatures will have lifelink, and all these little dudes are going to be deadly. So this is my first idea of the deck, is that I'm going to play white-green tokens, basically, that have Toxic, and they're just going to sit there on the board until the turn I Alpha Strike, and then I kill them.
Nice.
As we know that creatures that can't block are still worth something, because, well, the Decayed Zombies ended up being big players. Not necessarily in Constructed, but these ones... I guess they kind of deal as much damage because they're 1/1s that deal Toxic 1, so they deal poison counters, and those were 2/2s. So, but you know what? I think it's gonna be great.
Yeah, I was gonna round out my list with Skrelv's Hive as well. I like token based. I don't care that much about Skrelv himself. Might make it in, might not. But Skrelv's Hive, just the call to Glitter Blossom is awesome. I like the design of the card a lot, and I like token-based strategies. So they're not usually good, but I like to pick up the cards like this just in case tokens becomes a real thing. Like, we have some stuff now with, what's the Naya
Jetmir? With,
yeah, but...
the Cabaretti.
Cabaretti Charm. It's a pretty good tokens-based, and there's a lot of Cabaretti stuff that points you in the direction of tokens, so... This is a powerful token generator for that kind of deck, and goes along, One of the stronger cards in Standard is, Wedding Announcement. So I think there's definitely some strong pieces in the tokens game. So that's kind of what I'm looking to do with this card, is just build out a tokens deck.
Yeah, I like that. Having your Gala Greeters and having triggers every single turn, or 2 triggers, that seems nice. Whether that's actually good or not, I don't know. I guess I'm in the white-green brain right now, so all I'm thinking about is white-green decks. But to round out the end of my list is, of course, a land that I'm going to talk about, which is the Seed Core, which is all about toxic creatures, kind of. So what it is a gold land. It's rare, and it's a sphere. So you can tap it for colorless, or you can add 1 mana of any color, spend this mana only to cast Phyrexian creature spells, which is really nice, especially in a deck that you're trying to play Phyrexian creatures on turn 1 that are either white or green. And there's a possibility I might try to splash some black in there. We'll see. But that's nice. And I like the text at the bottom, which... I don't know if this ability is good, but it could help sway some games where it has another ability at the bottom. It says Corrupted, so you can tap it, and target 1/1 creature gets +2/+1 until end of turn. Activate only if an opponent has 3 or more poison counters. So then you're like, it adds the axis of like, am I going to kill you with poison or damage? Because now my little 1/1s, like either I can make them 3/2s so that when you block they trade, or I can deal extra damage to you. And depending on how many seed cores I have, it could be a lot of math going on. Sounds kind of interesting. The only little meh about it is that the Venerated Rot Priest is a 1/2, and so this doesn't do it to that. It does help with Skrelv and all of them, but it's mainly kind of focused towards the token. So there's that little hiccup, and if I added black, then maybe it would do some. Black has like a 1 mana 1/1 that has Toxic 1 and Death Touch. And then there's like a 2 mana 1/1 flyer with Toxic 1. So, you know, if that ended up being part of the game, but those just don't seem very strong. So I don't really know. I'm gonna play around with it a little bit, hopefully. So we'll have to see.
So this is like really, I love that they put this card in. As you say, it's kind of obviously geared towards toxic creatures because it has that trigger on poison and then the Phyrexian. And I think the reason this is here is that Pendelhaven is like a mainstay of Infect decks.
Oh, really?
Pendelhaven is, Pendelhaven is target 1/1 creature, gets +1/+2 till end of turn. And so you basically get into this holding pattern where they have a free protection spell for their thing against lightning bolts and stuff in Modern. And so you can never like cast your lightning bolt because they can Pendelhaven in response. They can never Pendelhaven because you could lightning bolt. But Pendelhaven is, in fact, always plays it. So this is like an aggressive version of Pendelhaven because it gives +2/+1 instead of +1. It's clearly a call out to Pendelhaven, but it's the toxic one, and Pendelhaven's for the Infect deck. So I think it's pretty cool that they put something like this.
That's nice. I knew it was a call out to Pendelhaven, but I didn't know that it was a mainstay in Toxic and Modern. So that's Infect. Sorry.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. That's so embarrassing. Infect in Modern, because that's probably a deck I would wanted. If I played Modern, or I was actually playing during that time when Modern was important. Is that mean to say?
All of our Modern listeners just quit that. They just turned our diehard Modern
on the Arena regulars. There's no Modern on Arena, so what are you doing? Anyway.
Now, Pendelhaven is better in Infect than this is in Toxic.
For sure. It doesn't protect.
Infect like uses that +1 power better, basically. So that's sort of the other reason Infect plays it is it's a free pump spell in the Infect deck. You might as well play at least one.
Yeah, where this one kind of, it doesn't, it just doesn't work exactly the same. But I'm still excited for that.
But still, if all your creatures are Phyrexian, definitely you should play this, right? Like
that's great. It will only get wonky when you have to play Skrelv's the Critter Blossom.
Yeah, or like a protection spell.
And you're like, fuck. But
what are the odds?
That's fine.
So that was my list. One call out I just wanted to sort of ask your opinion on. I think some of these cards are powerful, but sort of like Nissa, they just don't call out to me. But we got a cycle of mythic rare creatures.
Yes.
That is the Dominus cycle. So I happen to have the red one here just as an example. It's Solfim Mayhem Dominus, 2 red for a 5/4. It has the ability, if a source you control would deal non-combat damage to an opponent or a permanent opponent controls, deals double that damage instead. And then you can pay 1 Phyrexian red, and discard 2 cards to put an indestructible counter on them. So the whole cycle is like this. They're, above rate creatures with a strong activated ability that can give themselves an indestructible counter at the cost of a lot of resources. It's always at least 2 Phyrexian mana, and then like sack 2 creatures or discard 2 cards in this case, etc. But it ensures that you can keep that powerful ability on the battlefield because you get an indestructible counter at instant speed. Some of them don't even require mana. They just require Phyrexian mana. So did anything from this cycle... I think it's a cool cycle and pretty powerful. Just nothing that I saw that I was like, oh yeah, super gonna build a deck around that. But Felt like it was worth calling out this cycle because I'm sure a lot of people are
Yeah,
excited
it's
for it.
absolutely worth calling out, and I was going to dive a little bit deeper into it after our beer break, so I have more to talk about it then. But initial thoughts, I think they're all super sweet, and I love I love indestructible counters, and I love how they're trying new things with it. Because originally we saw them with these really expensive gods in like Kamigawa, which like they're like deities or something, I can't remember. But they'd come in with their indestructible counter, and you could take it off to do something. Anyway, I like this way, and they're all like sweet protection where you like, double shock yourself to do it. And with some other resource thing, but they all look pretty sweet, except for the green one. That one's the weakest, which is nice. It's nice to see the green one be like not the best.
That never happens.
I know.
By weakest, do you mean by far the best? Because that's usually
usually. And it's like like the one from what is it, Dominus United, where it's like, oh yeah, you get +1/+1 counters on all of your creatures every time you play creatures, instead of like one creature gets menace, and like come on, like what the fuck?
The red one, like
you're
stuff.
like, and every creature on the board gets a. Just give it to. There must have been a mistake.
Yeah. Why doesn't the red one ping everything then? Like why do?
Come on. But anyway, I will talk a little bit more about that cycle after our beer break. So, Jeff, let's just get to it. This beer break is brought to you by our patrons over on Patreon.
That's right. You're already supporting the show just by listening. But if you want to support the show even more, Patreon is the best way to do that. Plus, you get to vote on which co-host is your favorite by clicking the big ol' Buy Jeff a Beer button.
Or the bigger Buy Zach a Beer button. So go to patreon.com/arenaregulars to vote on your favorite host.
Or if you'd rather send us beer emojis than IRL beers, that's fine too. You can do that on the Arena Regulars Discord channel. The link is in the show notes. What monstrosity have you brought this time?
So, this beer I've actually wanted to have on the show for quite a long time. That doesn't necessarily mean that it's a beer that I think is fantastic. It just means it's a beer I thought was really cool. So I saw this last year and didn't buy enough of it. And then it ended up kind of going away until I saw it again this year and I had to snatch it up for the show. So this is Lost Craft's Neapolitan. It is a ice cream stout, which, you guessed it, with vanilla, chocolate, and strawberry flavors. It's also brewed with lactose, ice cream, and it's 6%. So
anytime I hear Neapolitan, it just makes me think of like the Simpsons scene when he's going through the freezer and he has all the Neapolitans and they just have the chocolate eaten out of each one, and the other two are like perfect and at the top, and he just keeps like, oh damn it, and he like keeps throwing them away to find one that has chocolate in it.
That's funny. So yeah, let's talk about this really quickly because I don't really care for chocolate ice cream that much. Do you like chocolate ice cream?
I would take if I was scooping out one of the flavors from Neapolitan, it would be vanilla.
Yeah. Okay.
I don't mind chocolate, but I tend to I like peanutty or coffee flavors. So I could do like a mocha ice cream, which is, coffee and chocolate, or peanut butter and chocolate's obviously a classic combo.
Oh yeah, duh.
But chocolate on its own, it wouldn't be my first choice.
I feel like it just doesn't really taste like chocolate that much. It's just kind of like brown ice cream that's like there. And I would, in my youth, I would have picked strawberry first. I think now I'd probably pick vanilla and then strawberry and then chocolate would be last.
That'd be my order as well.
So nice. High five. Boom. We are on the same page with Neapolitan, unlike Magic Cards, I think.
Now, I do have to, before we really get into the meat of this section, I have to correct an egregious error that I made in the previous section. Because while I was scrolling through, I realized there's a card that is absolutely on my list that was not mentioned.
Oh my God, Jeff, I can't believe you forgot a card. What is it?
I know. This needs to be rectified immediately. It is a white card, believe it or not.
Whoa!
And it is called Norn's Wellspring. So this is 1 and a white for an artifact. It says whenever a creature you control dies, scry 1 and put an oil counter on Norn's Wellspring. Then you can pay 1, tap it, and remove 2 oil counters to draw a card. Oh man, artifact that references sacrificing your creatures or wants you to sacrifice your creatures and doesn't really do anything? That's right up my alley. I love it.
This is a card I also looked at because I was thinking, well, with the Skritter Blossom,
Yep. Yeah.
with the
Now we're cooking with gas.
Yeah, right.
Huh?
That I'm assuming that my creatures are going to attack and die often. I'm going to be trading I'll attack with 4 creatures and only get 2 through and lose 2. So I was like, this seems like a really good way to keep drawing more cards. But I didn't put it on my list, but like I do like it. I'll probably end up crafting it, to be honest. That's just what's going to happen.
Meanwhile, I'm sitting over here like, I'm going to force a Mardu deck, and I'm going to sack the Hive tokens to my anvil, and then I'm going to get drawing cards off my Wellspring.
I mean,
Epic.
that sounds good in combination with the big red dragon. Seems yeah, I like it.
And it's a lot of non-creature cards involved in this ridiculous combo.
Yeah, so, and then being able to get, I guess, I don't know how many cards will go in the graveyard because you're sacrificing tokens. So 6 mana to get like a 2/2 artifact, probably not the best, or 2 mana artifact, not the best, but
I can dream.
you can dream. All right. Anyway, I did promise some sort of wacky story / deck about the red Dominus. So
Yes.
I'm not going to take credit for this. Frank Karsten posted this online, but I immediately was rethinking my entire life, but more so my entire list of my picks, because I was like, should I add every single one of these cards to my no pass list? I was like, I don't know, but it does revolve around the red Dominus. So the most important part
Already sounds a bit memey, but go.
Yes, it's very memey, but you can get a turn 4 kill with no combat. That's what I can offer you. The important part about the red Dominus is that its ability, of course, which if a source you control would deal non-combat damage to an opponent, it deals double that damage instead. So what we are going to do is we are going to take the Gruul legendary creature Miglaws, Maze Crusher, which it's a 3 mana 4/4, but it enters the battlefield with 5 oil counters. That's very important. It has 5 oil counters. Love to see that. Then we are also going to use probably some Copperline Gorges, but it doesn't really matter. They're just helpful because they make green and red, because we need double red and green and red. And then we're going to be using the Monumental Facade. It gets 2 oil counters, and then you can tap it for a colorless mana, or you can remove an oil counter from it, and you can put oil counters on other things. That's not so much important, but you need 2 Monumental Facades because they have 2 oil counters each. All right? You see where I'm going?
Uh-huh.
So then it's basically turn 1, you play Monumental Facade. Or sorry, turn 2, you play the Copperline Gorge, and then you play Filigree Silex, which is the final piece of the puzzle, which is a 2 mana legendary artifact, which in the story, you'll find out next week. But the card is you tap it, put an oil counter on the Silex, and you can tap it and sacrifice it to destroy each non-land permanent with mana value equal to the number of oil counters. That doesn't really matter because we're just going to tap it to put oil counters on it, because the final ability is you can tap it and remove 10 oil counters from among permanents you control, sacrifice the Silex, and deal 10 damage to any target. So, turn 1, we play the Facade. Turn 2, we play Copperline Gorge, and we play the Silex. Turn 3, we play another Copperline Gorge. We play the Gruul guy. Now we have 7 oil counters. We tap the Silex, get another oil counter on there just for fun. That one's not just for fun. The next one's for fun. Turn 4, we play another Monumental Facade, and then we play our fucking Dominus, sack it, deal 20 damage to them. I love it. I love it. I love it.
Yes. I love that it's definitely not competitive.
Yes.
So I'm happy with it.
It's so uncompetitive. But thank you for listening to that very long and very ridiculous kind of line.
Why is the Silex like all Phyrexian with the oil counters and stuff?
That is funny. I didn't think about that. I'm not going to get too deep into it. Maybe all of you can figure out in next week's episode. But spoiler alert, it's a drunken Vorthos. That's why I don't want to talk about it too much right now. Anyway.
Yes, I love that. As soon as you said it involves the red Dominus, I knew it was something to do with that. I thought it was going to be the classic, like, I don't know, some sort of nonsense where you can somehow end up with two of these in play, and then you like, are doubling and doubling again, so you don't have to do very much damage. This is, like, slightly nostalgic for me, because when I was a kid and first started playing Magic, I saw Furnace of Wrath, which is literally just this card, but it's not a creature, and it can't protect itself. It's just an enchantment. But it's not legendary, so you could stack them. And I remember just being, like, amazed. I was like, what? Doubles everything? If I get two of these, it quadruples everything. I get three, it's 8 times. Like, and just loving that, even though I'm sure that Furnace of Wrath was never a competitive card. Maybe it was, I don't know. Magic used to be a lot weaker. So
It's true. I mean, it was like 4 mana, though, right? It was only 4.
yeah, it was a 4 mana enchantment.
It was like 1 red.
So I think that's super cool. I don't know that the red one with its combo is really ever going to be the thing, but I love that it exists. Like, that's just super cool to exist in Magic. And people are going to have so much fun trying to make that work, whether it's in Kitchen Table, in Commander, where, you know, you have way more damage to deal, or, you know, even in competitive events. It's cool to put stuff like that in there. And the fact that the reason I said I'm happy it's not competitive is because that's the type of thing that, like, if it's good, it's just horrible.
Yeah, it's so unfun to play against.
You just die on turn 4 all the time. Anyone who's maybe played against a certain land-based combo deck in Pioneer knows that when you die on turn 3 or 4, like a high percentage of the time, it's not that fun.
Especially when, like, your only way of winning is, like, countering their stuff.
Yeah.
This one, obviously, there's a bunch of ways to disrupt the combo. And
oh, yeah, it's, like, super weak.
the big thing is
everything.
all of the pieces of the combo are legendary. So if you have multiples in your hand, it sucks so hard. Like, it really sucks. So,
that's hilarious.
Yeah. This is part of that's exactly.
I guess the Monumental Facade is not legendary.
Yeah, so. That's true. That's like the best part of the combo, honestly, to me, is that it's like I could play Monumental Facade. The rest of them, I'm like, I would love to try to do it, but I'm not super stoked on most of it.
The idea I take away from that mostly is, like, it's kind of cool to play the Monumental Facade with Filigree Silex. Just because it has the 2 free oil counters.
Exactly.
And you can move it over to make the blast bigger.
Yes. So I just wanted to point that out. I like it. But obviously none of those cards made it on my no pass list because I'm not going to build that deck. Also, all of those cards are like rare or mythic. So,
yeah, it's an expensive meme deck.
Yes. It's the kind of deck where you can go watch streamers play it on, like, the early access thing. That will be a lot of fun. And then after that, no one will want to play it because it'll be like, I got to watch somebody else do it. And that's what I recommend you do as well. If that sounded fun, you should go just watch a streamer do it so that you don't have to spend a butt ton of wild cards to not be able to do it, you know? Like, the amount of games you're going to lose because all your cards are legendary and the combo doesn't come together, it's going to be really annoying.
And your opponent, like, gains a life. You're like, fuck, man, that's not fair.
Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. There's some certain streamers, we won't name any names, that will definitely be playing this deck.
Yeah.
And it will be all over YouTube for like a week.
We can totally name names. I don't know what you're talking about.
There was a deck like this last format too, and I ended up choosing it explicitly as my, like, overrated card for that set, just so nobody built that deck.
Yeah.
So this is in like a similar vein to that. But if you think you would have a ton of fun with it, hey man, it's up to you. But it is wildcard heavy to build this combo deck, and
Yes.
This is not a good deck.
And they're like the only card in the deck that might see some play might be the Silex. Like you might see that in some stuff. And like I don't see Monumental Facade really doing that much. But the Silex maybe in something. So
yeah, like I might play the Silex in my mono red control deck, kind of thing, because you just need board wipes in a control deck.
And then
something like that.
That's one way to get cards in the graveyard for your dragon dude, is blow up the world.
Exactly. And then I bring the Silex back.
And you do it over again. Because the thing about the Silex, if you haven't played with cards like this, once it hits the table, it kind of gets your opponent to be like, do I keep committing to the board or not? Like, whoa. And it especially... Well, sorry, go ahead.
Yeah, I just want to call out something about the Silex that I think a lot of people might read this as it destroys everything with mana value less than or equal to its oils. It's actually just equal to.
Yes.
They can commit more, but if they want to be careful about committing more with the same mana value of stuff they've already committed. You get it, like, this is kind of Ratchet Bomb-y or whatever.
Yes.
It's very weird to play with and against because it does make your opponent think about everything they play. But once you like make the decision to go up in oil, they're short of removing 10 oil counters. There's no going back, so then they can start committing smaller stuff. But you are right, like they can't commit their game-winning 5-drop. Usually you have a target in mind or something, and you're like, I'm just going to sit this on 5, and now if you ever play your Teferi, I have the answer locked and loaded.
Yeah. Or like you put it on 4 so that you never have to deal with Shieldred. And like...
Right, yeah.
Maybe you suicide your Koth because of it or something. But... when you get to 2, 3, and 4, that's the sweet spot. But anyway, Jeff, I did have a question for you as we're looking at things, which is specifically for Standard. And we had a card like this in, well, there's 2 cards actually, but one in particular. We had a card like this in the last set that was a reprint that we kind of told you to stay away from. Now, is this one just like that one? Is it just like an old card that shouldn't really be played anymore? Or do you think it's going to do anything? Which is...
Talking about the Arena?
Yes. Phyrexia Arena. Which is just 1 black enchantment. You draw an extra card at the beginning of your upkeep and you lose a life. Because it's a good, seemingly good black card. I don't even know if this card's good anymore. Because it's a do-nothing enchantment that gives you incremental advantage. But a lot of the cards in Standard tend to kind of give incremental advantage, just doing extra stuff. And especially in a meta where black is really good and Shieldred is really good, that is there more mono-black decks that are like, I want to go all in on my Shieldred plan? Is it just putting too many eggs in the same basket to have a Phyrexia Arena to be like, sweet, I get to draw cards and gain a bunch of life? Or is it just not worth playing?
Yeah, so I'm a big fan of this card. This is another nostalgia one for me. I owned an old school Phyrexia Arena back in the day, and I was like, the one of my kid friends that liked the card and always played it. I was like, look at how many cards I get to draw. The pessimist in me is saying this is not good enough anymore. I think people will try this, and ultimately it'll sort of filter out of deck lists, is my guess. Basically because what you're saying, it's like cards are so multi-dimensional these days that you can get card advantage without committing a card that only does that and does it slowly. Like you can get slow incremental card advantage just from the creatures you play. So you don't need this. It is interesting with Shieldred because it's good with your Shieldred because you negate the life gain or the life loss.
But it's really bad with your opponents.
It's bad with your opponent's Shieldred because then you're taking 3 every card you draw off this. I think ultimately, sadly, it won't it won't be good enough. Like, the other thing I always think about is, like, compare this to Wedding Announcement, which can draw you a card a turn also. But it can, if you are less interested in drawing the card every turn, it can make tokens for you instead. And then, like, flip into an ad. Like, it just feels like Wedding Announcement is leagues better than this card. Now, Wedding Announcement is very good, but still, that's the bar we've set in Standard.
I mean, like, this has the same mana cost as Liliana of the Veil. Like...
Right, and people aren't playing that. So yeah. That's the other thing, like you said, Black has so many options. It's just really the cream of the crop. I could see it maybe as, like, a sideboard card if there's, like, a non-black control deck of some sort, no Shieldred, and you really need to grind them out. You could bring this in, maybe. And they also can't destroy enchantments easily. I don't know what deck this is coming in against, but it's possible.
Yeah, I agree with you that we might see it sprinkled in, but it's not going to do very much. Though, of course, then this leads me to the other card that we're talking about, which is black cards and heavy black cards, and is a Phyrexia and Obliterator, which is...
Yeah, right next to it, because it's Phyrexia in the name.
But black for the 5/5 Trampler that makes people sacrifice things when they deal damage to it. Will this card do anything? I actually have never played this card in a Standard format, so I don't remember. Did you know? Did this do anything when it was in Standard? Was it huge? Was it like the?
I don't know what in Standard. This did something in. It's either Pioneer or Modern, like semi-recently, but it was a specific answer to a certain type of thing that dealt damage to stuff.
Yeah.
So it was almost like a combo piece.
I'm going to guess it was Modern. I don't think it's Pioneer legal till now, so...
Okay, yeah, but there was, like... This card was randomly showing up for some reason. It was... I can't remember why, but it basically just, like, make the opponent sack everything they had, and that was the whole...
plan.
That was like the whole plan. I think that just gets... There's so many efficient removal spells, it just gets killed before, like, no one's ever going to deal any damage to it. It could start to warp the meta if people are starting to move towards damage-based removal and creature combat. Like, if it starts to move in that direction, the black, mono black can just put this thing in, and they'll have a really tough time beating it. But currently, everyone's playing, like, -X type removal or destroy target blank type removal.
Yeah.
It's obviously pretty bad against that. But I could see it. This could make an impact if, aggro creature decks start to take over. Like, this is a tough card for them to beat.
Yeah.
Red decks in particular.
Yes. So we'll see, but I think you're pretty spot on with... If black is the best thing... this card doesn't beat black decks, and it doesn't help them enough.
Right.
So it's really not the place. It doesn't have a place, really, right now.
It's one of those weird things where it's quadruple black, but it actually wants black decks to not be good in order for it to be good, because it's so bad against black decks.
Yeah. Yeah. It kind of goes back to that weird black thing that used to be a big deal when we played a long time ago, but where black cards couldn't kill other black cards. Like, they could always destroy, like Terror could always destroy non-black, non-artifact things. Because the whole...
It's always Dark Banishing for me. That's the one that... And then a lot of your cards had Fear, and so if you were against a black opponent, they could just block normally.
But, like, everybody else couldn't, unless they had artifacts. Flavor, like, really cool, but ultimately, I guess, got removed. Fear was my favorite mechanic of all time when I was playing as a kid, so... I thought it was just the best thing ever. There was a card called Cover of Darkness from Onslaught that's 1 and a black for an enchantment. You could choose a creature type, and all creatures of that type have fear. And so, of course, I played a zombie deck, and I was like destroying all my goblin and elf opponents, where I'm like, you can't block any creature I play. Loved it. Probably not that great in the long run anyway, because I was doing that when artifact decks were busted because Mirrodin just came out.
They tried to bring it back, sort of, with Intimidate, or what was it called? Intimidate?
Yeah, it was called
but
Intimidate.
It was like specific color fear. Like, only creatures of this color can block it.
Yeah.
But people didn't like that either, so eventually they just got rid of that as well.
Yeah, it turns out people don't like abilities where they can't block, like, big abilities where they, like, are on a bunch of cards. They're like, wait, I can't block anything?
Yeah.
Like, we're getting way off topic, but it's like shadow cards. So,
Oh, yeah.
remember Shadow? So, if you don't know, Shadow was a mechanic where the creature couldn't be blocked or couldn't block creatures with or without Shadow. So, it's literally a shadow. They can only interact with other shadows on the battlefield. And it worked really well when you played Kitchen Table and no one had any Shadow cards because they'd never heard of that in their entire life. And all of your cards were Shadow. And so you just, like, attacked them mercilessly. And for whatever reason, they got rid of that mechanic. I don't know why. But...
I mean, it was balanced, right? I can't block their creatures either.
Yeah, exactly. But most of your cards were like 2 1s or 3 1s, and that was basically
4 1s and stuff. Yeah. There was a while when they did a whole lot of like slight variants on flying. There's like horsemanship and flying.
Yeah.
A lot of it was like, you can't block me unless you also have this.
Yeah.
It's like, guys, flying is the best one. Let's just.
It just makes the most sense. Stick with it. It's too confusing to have too many different ones. And it's not fun.
And you have like a creature with horsemanship and flying or some shit.
And you're like, what the fuck? It's like,
what can block this?
Yeah.
Does it have to have both?
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway, that's also well. I don't want to get into a bunch of mechanic talk. You know what we should really be talking about is the mechanics in this set.
Yeah. Just want to last thought. They sort of landed on Menace as their favorite unblockable mechanic.
Yes.
Okay. All of that led to Menace. So if you still hate Menace, it used to be a lot worse.
Yeah, it's true.
One thing I wanted to talk about was another cycle. And this is like, I love when they do stuff like this because it's nostalgic again for me. But it's the Twilight cycle. One of the second set I ever went to a pre-release for, which is Fifth Dawn. They had a cycle of cards called like White Sun's Zenith or Blue Sun's Zenith. So Mirrodin has 5 suns. Each one would, I guess, when it was at its zenith, would have like a mana surge and do something cool was the theme. Now that it's under Phyrexia, they have, Color Sun's Twilight. And they're also X spells, just like the Zenith Sun's cards were. Actually, were the Zenith? They weren't even from Fifth Dawn, were they? They were from like.
They were from Mirrodin Besieged, I think.
Right. Yeah, Mirrodin Besieged. Anyways, the idea was it was Mirrodin's Suns before, and now it's like Phyrexia's Suns. Yeah, so I think these are cool, and they have a similar sort of template where it's an X spell, it does its X thing, and if X is 5 or more, it does extra. There's none in particular that I'm majorly stoked on. We could read the white one, for example. It's sorcery X White Sun's Twilight. You gain X life, create X 1/1 colorless Phyrexian Might artifact creature tokens with toxic 1 that can't block. And then if X is 5 or more, you destroy all other creatures. Yeah, so they're pretty powerful if you get them up to 5. And mostly I think it's just a cool callback to like older cards.
Mm-hmm.
I guess is now less nostalgic for me now that I'm remembering that they were actually in a set I didn't play. But
what you're thinking of, I know what you're thinking of. It's the beacons they had in Fifth Dawn.
Yes, I was thinking of the beacons.
Which they did something and then shuffled back into their owner's library. But
right, those were pretty cool.
They were pretty sweet. But weirdly, I also have a nostalgia for the Zeniths. Because when you're talking about this, I had some in college. We had this box of just like cards nobody liked. It was kind of like when you open booster packs, you throw every other card into this box. It was the community chest. And I pulled a couple White Sun Zenith from it and would use them in this token deck I had with Elspeth Terrell that I had pulled from a draft we did. And it was just like the sweet thing. And I was like, oh yeah, tokens are fucking awesome. I love them. So seeing these come back as like something else is really exciting for me as well. So I understand that nostalgia. And I think they're like Blue Sun's Twilight is good. Like there were there's a card, I can't remember, it's from Ixalan, that like lets you steal a creature, and it was used in like mono blue spirits for a while against some bigger creature opponents. Like if you're playing against Gruul or mono green or something, you can steal their creatures. But this is that card, but better, and so it's just awesome. I'm like, oh, sick. This card is going to go straight into that sideboard, and I'm very happy about it. Also, cycles are awesome. I love seeing cycles.
Yeah.
Every Magic player likes them, so it's just part of Magic that makes me feel really happy. Which also brings me to a card that is added to a cycle that I wish they did a little bit differently. I wish they kind of added them in a different way so that we could actually use them better. But in any case, we have more of them, and I'm just happy we have more. But this is the sword cycle. So in Mirrodin, what was that? Scars of Mirrodin, and going into Mirrodin Besieged, and then New Phyrexia, they had a bunch of swords, Sword of whatever. And we have a new one called Sword of Forge and Frontier. They all cost 3 mana, and they all equip for 2. They all give equipped a creature +2/+2 and protection from 2 different colors. And then they have abilities when you hit that opponent or an opponent that represent the 2 different colors. So this one specifically is +2/+2 and protection from red and green. And whenever a equipped creature deals combat damage to a player, exile the top 2 cards of your library. You may play those cards this turn, and you may play an additional land this turn. So the first one is red, and the second one's green. But I like these. They've added more in like Modern Horizons sets, which makes them non-Pioneer legal. So I think this is the first one that's Pioneer legal that we can play, which is nice. It's not the best one, but I do like them. I don't think it's going to be playable really anywhere, but it is a cool card, and I'd love to see cycles slowly doled out where they just give you like a little, just like a penny, just a little. Just here's one more. You can wait 5 years and get another one.
Sword.
Yeah,
that's right. But as we improve our design, they get worse. Just so you know. So.
Yeah.
Yeah, the way these tend to play out in practice is like if a Gruul deck becomes awesome, then you put this in your sideboard and the Gruul deck basically can't beat it. Because the protection is really the best part of these things. Because otherwise they're just so slow, expensive, and contingent on you dealing damage to a player. It's never the best. So swords are super cool, but I find in the competitive landscape in practice, the way they get used is just like, I put it in my sideboard if like red-green's a big deck that I need to have an easy way to fight. But it's still pretty cool to get another sword here. Like, again, just the nostalgic callbacks and the sword cycle is particularly interesting because, yeah, like you said, they haven't made them all. And they just keep making 1 or 2 here and there. So that is pretty sweet. And there's no reason they couldn't double up again on the same colors, right? Like, just a different design of the red-green sword or whatever. So, yeah, definitely the sword's a cool card. I'm not super high on it being like a big player in any of the formats that I play.
That's why I'm not going to pick it up when I see it. Though it's one of that's the real test.
It's so good in draft. You would take this.
I would want to take it. I mean, like, okay, in draft, is it so good in draft?
It's so good in draft. Yeah, it's amazing.
I guess it is, but like,
this is like the kind of card in draft that like you would just play this, and then you're just gonna spike sometimes when you're against a red-green opponent.
It's true. Okay.
That has happened to me when I was playing a black-white deck, and it was in, what was it called when they had masterpieces or whatever?
Oh, King Kaladesh,
like, someone had Sword of Light and Shadow, and I was just like, well, what the fuck? Like, I literally cannot beat this card. I didn't main deck any artifact destruction. I have to side in anything I happen to pick that can kill that in game 2. And like hope it lines up well, but I just cannot beat this card. Like pro white and black, F you.
What does that one even do?
It like reanimates creatures and stuff. It was very good.
Oh boy.
It was not beatable.
I really only know Feast and Famine because that's amazing in Commander because it gives pro black and green.
Untaps all your lands.
It untaps all your lands and makes them discard a card. And then I know Fire and Ice, that's a good modern card. That's like the most expensive one because it deals 2 damage when it attacks, I think. Or is it only when it hits your opponent? Maybe it is when it hits your opponent. It deals 2 damage and then it does something else. I can't remember. But
okay, so Light and Shadow gains 3 life and returns a creature to your hand from your graveyard.
Okay. That's
which there's nothing you could do anything about.
So.
But basically, they just equip something, attack you. You can't block it because it has protection from all your stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And then they re-equip it to something on defense, and you're just like, okay.
Yeah, but that's Kaladesh, so you do have artifact creatures.
They were all colored, man. I mean, I had some like crappy 3/2 chump blockers or whatever. But
you can block.
The thing also gets +2/+2s.
Yeah, I mean, you're not going to trade with it, but it also goes on whatever creature they want.
Servo.
So, yeah, block. But anyway, yeah, it's cool to have swords back, but I just don't think they're ever going to be... They're never going to be what I want them to be. They seem super fucking cool, and I love the look of them. But, yeah, they're not going to... It's going to be good in draft. You're right. I don't know why I would think it wouldn't be good in draft.
All right, Zach. So speaking of, nostalgia and, frankly, like, just a big WTF moment, there's one more card I want to talk about.
Okay.
It is a mythic rare artifact from this set.
Okay.
And it's called Staff of Completion.
Yep.
So this thing's a 3-mana artifact. Let me read this for you guys. You can tap it and pay 1 life to destroy target permanent that you own. Okay. You can tap it and pay 2 life to add 1 mana of any color. You can tap it and pay 3 life to proliferate. You can tap it and pay 4 life to draw a card. Or you can pay 5 and untap it. So this is a reference to Staff of Domination, which is a card I definitely liked back in the day.
Mm-hmm.
But Staff of Domination, you had to like pay mana. It was tap 1 and tap it, pay 2 and tap it, and it did like increasingly good things. These abilities are very confusing to me. I have no idea if this card is good.
I cannot tell.
The first one is just the biggest, like it just throws you for a loop right away. Pay 1 life. Tap it, destroy target permanent you own. Is this like a counter to Blue Sun's?
Yeah.
Blue Sun's Twilight? Like, haha, Zach and your stupid Blue Sun's Twilight.
Fuck you, I'm going to destroy it. I don't know what that first one is.
Like, if they steal something, and this was tapped, and I didn't have mana to untap it, I can still kill it next turn or whatever. Is that the idea? Presumably, if they're stealing something, I can use this to kill it in response. But I guess if it's tapped and I can't untap it, then I could kill it next turn.
Yeah. Is there anything...
It's such a weird ability.
There are No, those don't really matter. Why? I'm trying to think of if there's a card in the set that cares about you...
Oh... I figured it out.
What?
It combos with Dubious Challenge. So you play this, and then you Dubious Challenge, and you kill whatever they take.
Oh, there you go. That
yeah.
That is it.
It's genius.
This card went from like piece of shit to your favorite card.
Yeah, it curves right into it. It's 3 into 4. Yeah. This is clearly what it was for.
Oh my gosh. I'm trying to think if there's any card that like gives your stuff to your opponent, where you're like, oh, you do this and you have to give it away.
Yeah, but a lot of the cards that do that don't do anything else. So, like, why would I Harmless Offering, give you something, and then destroy it with my Staff of Completion?
The rest of it seems pretty good, though. I mean,
4 life's a lot to draw a card. I love drawing cards as much as the next Magic player, but like life totals are mattering more and more in games of Magic. People are still stuck in the old days when like gaining life wasn't good, and now it's like gaining life is really good.
Yeah.
So by counterpoint, like paying a lot of life is quite bad.
That is true. I don't know if this is gonna play in like Sorry, I'm looking at this through like Staff of Domination. When I've seen it do busted things, is because we were playing Commander and something crazy happened where they got a bunch of mana and they can do a ton of stuff and draw a bunch of cards. Staff of Domination cost 1 to untap it, so that was a little bit different. But your life total is completely different, so then I would tap the shit out of this. Commander.
Yeah, maybe it is just a Commander card because.
I think so. There's quite a few commander cards that are just in here. Like, did you see that rat commander? That's just like, this is this is 100%. It's like a legendary rat that cares about rats. Yeah. And you're like, okay.
Right, it's clearly just a rat commander.
Yeah, this is a rat commander. Boom, done. Rat commander. There's also a juggernaut commander that just makes all your creatures juggernauts.
I saw that. Yeah, I love that.
And so you're like, okay, cool. This is so dumb. It's just fucking.
It's like awful.
It's so awful. But like, if you want to build a juggernaut deck, awesome. Like, hey, it's good with like Critter Blossom because when you hit 8 mana, all your critters become 5/3s.
There you go.
But anyway. Then Toxic just doesn't matter. It's just such a funny, like, it looks, some of these things, it's like, they make commander decks for these sets. Why is this not in the commander deck? Like, why did you put this in the regular set? This isn't going to do anything. Like, maybe if I lose to this in limited, which totally could happen because, like, it is a pretty, like, it's still 8 mana, though. That's so much. I don't know.
It's so expensive.
It's so expensive. Like, anyway, I do love the Staff of Completion callback. I'm on the same boat with you, where I don't know whether it's good or not, but I am erring on the side of I think it's really good because for whatever reason these things just end up being super busted. Though 5 mana to untap is really bad. So
yeah, I think you have to be in it for the proliferate. Mm-hmm. If you're just trying to draw cards off it, it's too expensive. If you're adding mana, that's like
so bad.
Manolith or whatever.
But
like,
no, it's it hurts.
Yes,
yeah.
So you have to kind of want all. I'm going to say 3 abilities because what the fuck is the first ability? So, all right, you have to be interested in all 3 abilities, and like maybe you're a life gain deck. Is that what's going on here? I don't know, but just thought this was a really, really interesting card. Mm-hmm. And obviously now that I realized it combos with Dubious Challenge, it's definitely on my no-pass list because I'm expecting Dubious Challenge to be added to Arena any minute now.
Yeah, you think so? We are getting Shadows over Innistrad remastered, so that means we're definitely not getting Dubious Challenge in it. Like, it's a bunch of like Innistrad cards and then Dubious Challenge.
Hey man, they know they messed up with Kaladesh Remastered. Okay, they left out everyone's favorite card.
I mean, it would be nice at some point where they're just like, here's a bunch of random rares from shit that like nobody cares about.
We're gonna code this card for the one guy that likes this card.
Yeah, that you should build this deck for the next Pioneer event we go to.
Build Staff of Completion Dubious Challenge deck.
Anyway, Jeff, I think it's time to go to last call and close this puppy out.
Let's do it.
As always, we rate our beers on a scale of bronze to mythic, just like the tiers in Arena. And this has nothing to do with what tier you're in right now, because everyone's in different tiers at different times. And the tiers also don't really matter as much as they used to, because you can play events where it just doesn't matter. It just doesn't matter. Though, with that being said, bronze beers are trash. They're horrible. You hate them, you spit them out, you can't even finish them. They're that bad.
Yeah, silver beers are one step up. They're just kind of not super interesting. We tend to put macro brews in this category.
Gold beers are fine, but you don't really think about them very often, and they're just, they're there at the beer store.
Platinum are solid. You would definitely drink this again.
Diamond beers are exceptional. You would drink these often. You go back to the store to get them, and you show them to your friends.
And Mythic, these are the best of the best. These are your favorite beers. You recommend these to anyone who will listen, and you're willing to travel to get them.
All right, Jeff. Do you know which beer you're going to pick for your favorite of the evening?
I think so.
Okay.
All right. You ready?
Here we go.
Let's do it.
3, 2, 1. Neapolitan. Of course.
Unsurprising.
Yeah. Which
one do you want to start with?
I felt like I almost got you a little bit. I was like, maybe I got him. Probably not. Let's start with mine. Let's start with Lost Craft Neapolitan Ice Cream Stout. I like this one a lot more than I remembered. I've tasted this beer before, but as we've always said, when you're actually drinking a beer and thinking about how you're going to have to rate it afterwards, which most of the time, if you think that you rate beers in your mind when you're like drinking them, you kind of do. But when you actually have to sit down and be like, which one is objectively better and which one would I actually want to have more of, and give it an actual like kind of number rating / like tier, it changes the way you taste things. So this is a lot better than what I remember. And it definitely felt ice creamy. The parts of Neapolitan ice cream that I liked came through, even though there is a bit of chocolate in there. I could kind of taste the strawberry. I was like, it smells like it. I like it. Lost Craft, some of their stuff, last couple times we've had stuff from Lost Craft, I'm like, hey, I kind of like this. This is, I think you're pretty good. With that being said, I don't know if it creeps up in Diamond, but I'll probably talk about it a lot. And I will get it when I see it, but I'm not going to go. It's kind of a gimmick. It's a bit of a gimmick, so I'm going to keep it in platinum.
Yeah.
So it's super fun, and I want to have people taste it, but I'm not going to get a case. I don't like it that much.
Yeah, I have pretty much the exact same thoughts. As soon as I tasted it, I was like, oh, like I get it. I get chocolate. I get vanilla. I get strawberry.
Mm-hmm.
Like they actually delivered on what they are promising here, which is the Neapolitan ice cream stout. So I really like that, because one of my pet peeves is when they have these like gimmicky names for something and then it just tastes like a stout and you don't really get any of that at all.
Mm-hmm.
This definitely is not that. You get, as soon as I taste it, I was like, oh yeah, that Neapolitan, okay. So big thumbs up to Lost Craft for that. That being said, I think the gimmicky like factor of it is why I didn't end up choosing it. About halfway through the beer, I was kind of like, all right, I get it. I've had enough. I've had enough of the
I'm over it. Yeah,
stout. Yeah, and it is like creamy, like ice cream and stuff too. Mm-hmm. So they did a great job on that, and I liked it a lot at first, and then just sort of as time wore on, it kind of reminded me that this is not the type of beer I necessarily want, because I kind of it's cool at first, and then I kind of get bored of it, which is why that's just why I'm less into some of these gimmicky things, or because, like I said, usually they don't actually deliver what they promise, and then I just bought a bad beer because the marketing team was like, oh, let's call it this to sell our crappy beer.
Yeah, that is the worst.
So I'm glad it wasn't that.
Yeah. So
I'm with you. Like, I put this at platinum as well.
Mm-hmm. Well, then I would love to hear what you think about Hazed and Confused, the juicy IPA.
Yeah. So this is more my style. Big fan of IPAs and East Coast IPAs in particular. And then, of course, Mad Tom, the West Coast cousin of this, is one of my favorite beers. I thought this was pretty good. I think my expectations were higher. Like, it didn't quite meet my lofty expectations. But it does have that juicy citrus, like, punch to it that you expect from an East Coast style. It is what it says it is, and it's a well-made version of it. But I think, like, trying to compare it mentally to some of the other East Coast IPAs I've had, I don't know if this one tops them.
Yeah. With IPAs, just in general, I tend to really like the juicy ones. And this, so the East Coast style, New England, if it says hazy and juicy, those are the ones I usually are really interested in. And this might not be juicy enough for me, but that also is because when I want juicy beers, I want it to be closer to the juicy and less away from the beer. So we always differ on that. So that's why I feel like about it. I don't know. It is, like you said, a well-made beer. I'm not going to give it gold, but I will give it like low platinum. That, like, It's a well-made beer. It is solid. I would point to it and be like, yeah, it's good. Though with Muskoka, like you said before, Mad Tom or Twice as Mad are the ones I would always go to before this.
Yeah.
If
Twice as Mad is so good.
yeah, and if people are looking for a juicy IPA, I would probably steer them away from this one and actually towards one of Lost Craft's juicier ones instead. If we're standing in the aisle and they're both there, because these beers tend to be close together. So,
Yeah, I have some other like New England style IPAs I'd probably point people towards first.
But that's also like
Even like Life in the Clouds or whatever.
Yeah, which I would point them away from Life of the Clouds because I don't like it that much. But yeah, so I still think it's good, but not in my recommendation.
Yeah, I have this at like higher platinum for me. But
so mine's
definitely couldn't give it diamond, which is kind of what I expected to give it coming in.
Interesting. Okay. I was expecting to give it actually gold, I think, and it jumped up on me. So
there you go. Yeah. Defied both of our expectations.
Yeah, I don't have the same nostalgic feel towards Muskoka Brewery that you do, so I never have to fight against it. I actually have to do the opposite and be like, try to, maybe I got to push it up a little bit. Yeah. But anyway, good beers this week. I almost got you. I always love when I almost get you with something fucking weird. So maybe next time.
You've gotten me a few times, but this one, I think it was just too gimmicky.
Yeah, probably too gimmicky, but
too memey.
Yeah,
it's like that meme deck we were talking about. You know.
Yeah.
It might win a game or two.
Yeah, exactly. This is what maybe I should just call my deck Neapolitan Toxic Neapolitan. Does that make sense? No,
there you go.
Not really. Anyway, let's close this episode out because I'm saying weird stuff. Let's go to closing time. So you can always reach us at Arena Regulars on Twitter and Instagram.
You can also find us on MTG Arena itself. We might be under the username Arena Regulars Podcast.
If you want to talk to me personally, you can find me at Zulberg. That is ZeulBerg on Twitter and Instagram. But Jeff, where can they find you?
Best place to find me is on our Discord channel. I go by Regular Jeff on the channel, and you can find the link in the show notes.
Please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts, on Spotify. Follow us on Spotify as well as going to our YouTube channel. All of the places, all of the things, find us. This has been the Arena Regulars.
Reminding you not to craft a meme convoluted combo deck that is full of legendaries and rares.
Good night. All right, that's fine.